One of your most obvious popular tapes is the Vybz Kartel, the two cartel that you guys had put out there. All right.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I know before you even got to Cartel, we're gonna bring up this name again. Mr. Morgan, and there was another name that you had brought up in the first part was Jackie Juiceum. How did they lead you to that whole Vybz Kartel situation?
Well, so Jackie, Jackie Juiceum and Mr. Morgan were both working in different capacities at Greensleeves Records at the time. And Cartel had, like, in sort of as this is kind of getting ready to happen, it was been like had been in talks with them, and then ended up signing to Greensleeves through Don Corleone, through Vendetta, or where I don't remember if it was Vendetta, it was his Don Corleone label at the time. So Cartel through Don ended up signing to Greensleeves, and I believe Morgan was, doing what he was doing at the time, which was promotions, working records, working songs, working artists. And Jackie was working as a consultant because Jackie was someone, even to this day, like, that introduced me to, most of the people that are my initial kind of like real links into dancehall. Not every single one. There are some other key people, but like Jackie introduced me to Jeremy Harding and Sean Paul in, wow, this is pre-Federation, 97 or 98 when Infiltrate was out. Sean came to New York. He probably had to Infiltrate on a Strictly the Best compilation, and was like, oh, Max, like you need to meet Jeremy. And link me with Jeremy. Jackie's the one that introduced me to Sham and Dave Kelly and Janet Davidson, who's Dave and Sham's partner in Madhouse. You know what I mean? Like that list could go on and on and on. I probably couldn't even in 2 hours alone kind of impress upon people the importance that she's played, in my life in reggae, but also just in a lot of things in reggae and dancehall. And so Jackie was there as a consultant, and between them, I believe it was kind of Jackie and the idea of like, oh, you guys have been doing these mixtapes. Jackie's American, so she grew up, in New York. Mr. Morgan is obviously Canadian. And so you guys have been doing these mixtapes, like Cartel is signed to Greensleeves, and like, probably it would be really cool if you guys did a mixtape. Like, they're working on the album. And again, this was in the era of like, that was a very standard thing in hip hop, and in the major label hip hop system was like, people would use a mixtape to get signed, or if someone was signed, you would put out a mixtape to kind of like get the streets bubbling, and then off of that momentum, then you release your single, then you do your album. So it was like a very standard kind of way of marketing and launching, newer artists.
Especially from a hip hop standpoint, not really a dancehall standpoint.
There was no real precedent from a dancehall standpoint at that point. Dancehall, I'm not talking about reggae albums of like the 70s so much, but when we're moving into dancehall, like the idea, a dancehall album was, a compilation of all of your hits from the last year and a half that were on 7-inch, put onto an LP and a CD, so people could buy them in that format. But essentially, the album has never been, in the dancehall era, the primary format that exposed music. You know what I mean? You had to go to a dance, you had to listen to a dance, get into mixtapes. That culture, that's more the culture of dancehall for sure. If we're talking about 90s and 2000s. So she had the idea, and kind of just kind of just made the link, and was like, yo, this is something we should do. And they said it's a Cartel, and we set up a thing. I think, I don't know, maybe Greensleeves paid for the plane ticket or something, like maybe something like that. Like Greensleeves paid for the plane ticket. And I was like, all right, cool. This sounds great. Like Cartel was definitely already bubbling, and like we knew he was dope. But again, it was 2003, so it was early on. It was before that first album. And so, yeah, so I just flew to Jamaica. I had met him. Yeah, I had to have met him before. And I don't remember this for sure. But basically, I flew to Jamaica, and he had sent his boy Cell Block to pick me up at the airport. And you'll hear Cell Block shouted out in a bunch of the songs from that era. And I've been going to Jamaica maybe for 2 years at this point, but I'm going once a year. So this is maybe like my third, maybe fourth trip. So I don't really know my way around. I know some people, but we've just been learning this stuff. And so, yeah, so Cell Block picks me up, and we drive into Portmore and pull into a driveway, pull into a house. We go into a house, and we're in like a decent sized room, and it's Vybz Kartel and Cassette Jones. And Cassette Jones, who I had never met, but obviously is the legendary Cassette Jones. You know what I'm saying? So again, as just like a kid kind of learning about this stuff and coming from foreign, like that's like, wow, this is a big, like Cassette Jones might have been a more worldwide known name than Vybz Kartel at that point.
Okay, you know what? You might have a point at that time, because he's a cassette man. So on every cassette, that's who you hear. And Cartel is just getting his. Yes, he might have had like the Tech Buddy, and those songs are out already, but it still wasn't that superstar Cartel.
We could do the timeline. I don't think Tech Buddy was out then.
Okay,
I think this is before, at least when we started working on it. I think this is before Tech Buddy. I think Tech Buddy comes after we did this whole mixtape, to be honest with you. I would have to do some research. But I think it comes after, because I'll jump out of timeline, because on the second mix, Time Served, we voiced Tech Buddy, Picture This, on Dancehall Rock Rhythm. So I think that's the timeline. I think Tech Buddy comes after it, and that was like a Jazzy T Delano. That was a Renaissance production. Yep. So I think that comes. So even to show you the levels, that Cartel's not even at that level yet. This is in a McCall Kanai with a buckle of tall Kanai, Tough a Lie, first set of Cartel tunes that were coming out of Don Corleone's studio. That was the era that we really kind of started in with the first mix, because like I said, it was before the first album. This was pre albums Up to the Time. So this is before Up to the Time came out.
Because this one, the first mix was called From Time to Time. So yeah, you guys are still playing within the time, because this is what the album is going to be, something to do with time. So then you guys stayed within that time frame there.
Well, because but that comes from him being the time minister, and that was which also became the crime minister. But so the time thing was from that point. That was a thing for him, and I don't really know the history of that or where that kind of first, but that was his lead in, his ad lib, Up to the Time, so that I believe is where sort of the time piece of that comes from, and he chose to use that throughout, because it was like it was really up to the time, and then that becomes the name of the album. And then when we're talking about the mixtape, I don't know I mean, we couldn't have named it until afterward. And he does some lines in there that goes, from time to time, da 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 da.
Yeah, time was definitely the Kartel
Yeah, so
thing.
it was that was in his mind. I don't know where that came from, but that was that era. But it was before the album was called Up to the Time. That was his ad lib, and it appeared a bunch in the things that he was saying on the mix. And so I think we, after the fact, we just settled on like, oh yeah, this should be From Time to Time, because he had a few references of that in there. And so we just sat down, and I had, CDs of rhythms that I wanted to use. And I had never sat in the studio with him. I had never worked with him. Like I said, I'm sure I had met him, but I don't know how he works. I don't know how he voices. I don't know, some people, I want a voice on this. I don't want a voice on that, or do whatever. And so I gave the CD to Jones. He loaded everything up. He was recording on like a Roland VS 880 or a 1680. So it's like a internal self-contained digital recorder. And it's a typical like Jamaican house room. It's like, these like hard ceramic tiles, all concrete walls, all the surfaces are hard. It's like the worst environment you could think of for like for studio and for sound. But it just didn't matter. So we loaded everything up, and I don't know what, he's going to want to do this. He's not going to want to do that. And Kenny and I kind of gone through and been like, we've got a bunch of ideas. So we kind of had a lot of rhythms, some dancehall rhythms, some kind of original stuff, some original foundation rhythms, a good amount of hip hop stuff, because I thought it would be, like, again, early in this, in the career of where we were, like, I was still fully immersed in hip hop world, doing big parties and all of that stuff. But also now fully immersed in dancehall world, and wanting to kind of look, the idea, and a big idea for me has always been wanting to help bring more people into the dancehall and reggae world. Mm-hmm. But in a way where the music is legit, is authentic, is not not trying to do a thing that's like, oh, this is a crossover. But the idea of combining some real street shit when it came to hip hop, the idea of mixtapes, the type of things that an artist would do on mixtape that you wouldn't do for your album. You would do a song with a big hook and some more melody for your album, but on a mixtape, you would get the rappers rapping.
Yeah.
And so that was some of the idea that we brought to this, that we kind of, Kenny and I, put together. And then we're here in this room, and I really don't have any idea, because it wasn't really like a back and forth with him about what we were going to do. Mm-hmm. It was just like, oh, I hope this dude shows up when I get there. Was actually probably like the biggest thought that I had, was like, yo, I hope I don't get to Kingston and end up spending 5 days just waiting around and we don't get anything done. Because it's a very real possibility.
1,000%.
With it, not even just with him, with anybody. It's just
1,000%.
Mm-hmm. Island time. And so we're there, and we just, I said, okay, like, I got these beats, like, what, I'd love to record something on this. And the first thing we recorded and the first thing we threw on it ended up being the first thing on that mixtape, which I think was a bootleg Tupac 50 Cent record.
Yes.
And it was just like a real simple, dark hip hop beat. And my idea for it, like the way it appears on the mix, was this idea that I had. But again, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to be like, okay, here's what I want you to do. Like, if I was going to be able to produce in that capacity, or it was going to be like, run the rhythm, here's a thing, or just like
Is
me
he going
having
to
a
just give
hideout.
me what he wants, or can I kind of have my input to make it the way that I want it to be?
Right. So we started out, and so we throw that beat on, starts DJing different things, and I was like, okay, like, here's what I want to do. Like, I want to DJ. I want you to DJ something, but then in the mix, I'm gonna pull it up. So I'm gonna go. So you go. I want you to go like level, yo. Hold on. And I had to explain this. So like I'm like, all right, but in the mix, I'm gonna bring the beat down back there, and then I want you to do some kind of talk. We'll talk, and then you're gonna come in with another tune, almost like the way you would. I think I described it like the way you might on a stage show. There's just a rhythm juggling, and you might give a talk that leads into your girl tune, and then you might go level and give a talk that leads into a weed tune, and then go level and give a talk that leads into another tune. So like the concept of that and combining it with this hip hop beat. And so we did that. And I think that first thing is like 4 or 5 tunes. And it's like all of these like Badman tunes that he had been doing on dub. Ring dong, ding dong, boy, head swell.
Yes.
Just a bunch like that era. So like Kartel fans knew those, like knew those. So I was like, all right, this is going to catch people. And so we did it, and we built it back in that way. And so he's just like, yeah, whatever, like wheels off another one. And it, you know, and so then we kind of do the talks, and he's like, one of the things is like, yo, Max, what do you think about that one? You feel that one? Hold on, let me try something else. And it's just kind of this thing where I don't think I thought of it at the time this way, but it developed into this thing that I feel pretty strongly about, of like, if we're doing a mixtape with someone, I don't just want it to be a bunch of songs. Like, I want the artist's personality to be reflected in it. I want it to be more than just any of the songs, more than just the collection of the songs. Like, I really want it to be a body of work. And
with some talking and stuff in there somewhere, so you get another side of their personality type of thing.
With some talking, just with some, however you want to do it, with some personality. Because when an artist is being an artist, they're delivering their song. You know what I mean? But you're not getting that like conversational, because I also came from this background, like we talked about in the other part, of interviewing people. So like getting some insight into, or in terms of like dance hall, like a lot of it was like, all right, the way like a selector would introduce this would give us a talk that made this next song connect. It wasn't just like, boom, here's a song, and then you listen to it and you understand what it's about. You're already being brought into it from the selector talking. So that was kind of like the idea. And so we just sat and just, yo, what about this one? Yo, what about this one? What about this one? What about Sling Ting? What about Cuss Cuss? And bro, he just had song after song after song after song. And we just wheeled off basically everything except for maybe 1 or 2 things, maybe even everything, in that one sitting with Jones. And then I also had this thing of like, and again, this goes to like, you know, the rappers like kicking an acapella. That's some rapper shit. Like, okay, hold on. Like, yeah. Okay, we're rocking these songs. Nah. I want you to hear my words. I want you to hear me rap. That was like a different level of like, okay, there's no music. This is just words. So I had this idea of like, yo, like, do you have anything that we can do just as an acapella? Because I want to use this to break up, you know, the different parts of it or whatever. I just kind of had in my mind, knowing what I knew about hip hop and mixtapes and what I loved about dancehall, like just the different elements that I wanted to make up this whole thing that would become the mixtape. We didn't know how they were going to come together. or any of that. I just knew I needed him talking. I needed him singing songs. I needed an a cappella. And so I was like, all right, so can we do something? And then he starts, it's probably the last thing we do. He goes, Miade, Portmore scheme, vibes machine, end time dashin, play Safi bashin. And yo, he gets through like a few lines of that. And Cassette Jones starts knocking on the table, like as Kartel is DJing. And I'm just sitting there like literally just like mystified and like just losing my, like, yo, I'm sitting here in this room doing this. We just did this whole thing. And like that type of like spontaneous collaboration. And Jones just starts knocking the table and Kartel just keeps DJing through the thing. And then he says something at the end. And I think I say something at the end, just like far, I don't have a mic or whatever. And it was just like, yo, like to this day, that's one of my favorite, not only one of my favorite things that I've ever worked on or ever recorded, it's one of my favorite pieces of recorded Vybz Kartel, period, in the history of the 100 million Vybz Kartel songs that exist.
That's one of your favorite interaction songs. That right there.
Yeah. And so like having that, we just like, and so then, and I'm just like, you know, my mind is blown. We just sat there for like the whole night, sitting with Vybz Kartel and Cassette Jones recording this. I'm like, wow, this is blowing my mind. And then, because it's in the studio days of 2003, I fly out. I still don't have, or no, I leave the studio and I don't have the recorded stuff. You couldn't like, it would take like an hour to burn a CD off at that time. So I leave, and then maybe a few days later, this is crazy. I get from Cassette Jones this mini disc in my hand is the actual original split track pan left and right recordings of the From Time to Time mixtape in Cassette Jones handwriting.
That's wild, bro.
You know what I'm saying? And it's like, and now in 2024, I literally, you know, I'm sitting in my studio, like I literally keep this directly in front of my face where I sit at my studio desk, because I don't even believe that it's that. You know what I mean? That's where that comes from. Like that, just as a fan, like that's just my how much I love music and how much I love this. And like that mix, I love as a fan, like if I didn't even make it, if we didn't even make it, if Federation Sound didn't even physically make that with our own hands, like that's how I listen to that mix.
This podcast is brought to you by www.twolinedmusichut.com.